Just real quick, some announcements. If you haven't seen that I posted everywhere, we are having our CTF next week. And if you've never competed in one or don't even know what it is, that's totally okay. You can just show up and we'll help you find a team. Planning on having food and all that, so if you go into the Slack channel, I'll also send an email out probably today. You'll find a Google form link to like RSVP. You can put what kind of food you want, and we'll pick from that kind of what everyone's preference is. If you have any questions about it or what you need to get set up beforehand, just contact any of the cabinet in Slack or email us IASG-cabinet at IAState, and we'll help you out. But that will be at 5:15. The actual competition will start at 5:30, and we'll run either 2 to 2.5 hours, and then we'll have the prize for the winning team. So even if you've got roommates or friends that haven't come to IASG before but are interested in competing in the event, then that's totally fine. Bring them with, form a team, and yeah. So reach out if you have any questions, but you'll probably want to get like a Cali box set up beforehand, just so you have those tools readily available. And then swag, do you want to say anything about that? I know you mentioned that voting's closing. Okay, so the link is in Slack in general, I think. If you want to vote on the swag, do so, because it's closing at the end of the meeting. And then today, presentation-wise, we have Josh Hale from ISUPD talking about physical security, devices hacking, and all that. Yeah. And then we'll have a beginner's night from Logan on cybersecurity and self-defense. So. Yeah, with that, I'll give it off to Josh. Should clip that on.
All right. Maybe. You ever have one of those days where everything's just 10 times more difficult than it needs to be? That's today. Okay, we'll get started. Hopefully I have plenty of time to get this. If those of you sitting in the back, you might want to come a little bit closer because stuff's going to be flashing on this screen and it's going to be a little tough to see. If you want to see it after the presentation a little bit more, it goes really fast, so come down a little closer if you really want to. A little bit about me. I have a bachelor's degree in computer engineering from here, so I spent a lot of time in this classroom as well as this building, so it's kind of trippy being in this building again. I have a master's degree in information assurance, also from here. They just couldn't get rid of me. I'm an offensive security certified professional. I got that last year. It's a heck of a fun class if you ever get a chance to do it. I've been working with ISU Police for 14 years. And I start a new position next week with IT security here at ISU. So that'll be a little weird, kind of a joint thing between ISU security and ISU Police. So I'm an active contributor to the METASPLOIT framework, and I've also contributed to the Hack5 land turtle, which I wish I had the ability to plug in today, but you'll see similar to what's going on. But I wrote the reverse HTTPS module that runs on this, so it's kind of fun. Little background, this is just some basic information if we've got some new people in here. IP communications, you have two-way communication, kind of like a two-way phone call. IP addresses are kind of like a phone call, phone number. Transmission, TCP, transmission control protocol, and user datagram protocol, UDP. They got lots of ports. You'll see some ports flying around today. I normally give this presentation to physical security professionals, so they don't do a whole lot of IT stuff. So basics of firewall, block the incoming, allow the outgoing to work. We'll talk about more about that. I usually give a phone example. I'm going to skip that today for the basis of time. So before we get on this little hacking demonstration, please don't try anything you're about to see on your own on somebody else's computer. I am a network administrator. We're going to actually be using ISUPD's firewall today as kind of a backdrop. We're not going to be going against any live production servers. I've got an old server from a CDC from last year that we're going to be hitting. I've scripted this for time because there's a lot of moving parts. I designed it using free software and expensive tools, so it's kind of fun. There are a lot of moving parts like this, so it's chances are something might mess up, but we'll see what we can do. So ISUPD's firewall, and then my snowfall area, which is at home, and that's kind of the basic overview of what we're doing. Going to be using Kali Linux. Does anybody in here not have any exposure to Kali? No. Okay, we'll move past that. Metasploit, probably seen that. The easiest way to get behind somebody's firewall is a rogue access point. I'm sure Dr. Jacobs and Dr. Daniels, you've heard a little bit about that. Most people plan them themselves. They don't like the wireless access at work, and they're pretty easy for hackers to get. I'm not going to talk about those because they're pretty laid back. Raspberry Pi. I actually have one of these set up in our office, but I've got it in a nice nondescript box. These I have set up so that when you plug them in, they automatically send a shell back to my machine, and they'll reconnect if it loses connection. So plan it behind somebody's firewall, you're pretty much into their network. So we're going to be using a Raspberry Pi as a pivoting tool here in a little bit. Pretty cheap, easy to hide. Reverse connections. Let's set one up. I'm going to be kind of bouncing back and forth between these guys. Okay, so let's get METASPLOIT fired up. Like anybody, I script everything. I start a lot of handlers, just kind of out of general principle. Never know what you're going to use. Sorry. Okay, that's all right. Hey, look, we've already got one. So this is my Raspberry Pi that's already planted. And basically I'm just on that machine. But I can see the network, stuff like that. These take a little while, so we'll get going here in a second. Come on. Okay. Now, what's one consideration if I'm planning this? If I take the card out, can somebody just read all your files? Come on, people. Yes. Okay, so how do I get around that? Encrypted partition, right? So let's decrypt our partition. Run post. This is going to take a few minutes, that's why I'm doing it now. So I have a little METASPLOIT module that I wrote that opens up the encrypted partition and goes ahead and mounts it so I can keep going on our presentation. So really what this is doing is it's a reverse connection. So it's reaching out to my computer from behind the other firewall. And unless you have outbound firewall blocks, it's just going to go through it. It's an HTTPS connection. It looks just like somebody behind that firewall is visiting their bank's website. So everything that's communicated within the interpreter payload is all HTTPS. So it's all encrypted. Don't have to worry about anybody snagging in on it. And is an intrusion detection system going to be able to do much with that? It's going to see it as web traffic, as HTTPS traffic. So if this house is even more secure. Front door is made 4 feet thick and made of solid titanium, and you've got the guy climbing in through the window. So that's kind of what's going on there. So this is the connection that it's making. Raspberry Pi 0, even smaller. You got to have a little external network interface, but these you could hide just about anywhere. The flip side with these, I haven't gotten them to run Kali, full Kali Linux very well. They're pretty slow. The Raspberry Pis, these that I'm running, have everything that Kali has on your computer. It's just a little bit slower because they're not running as fast. Hopefully that's about done here in a bit. LAN Turtle, it's from Hack5, it's 50 bucks. They're kind of cool. They have a USB port on one end and a network connection on the other. So you can just unplug somebody's network connection, plug this into their USB port, plug into it, and they don't even know that anything's going on. So if you're in the middle, think about what you can do with that. You can man in the middle of their stuff. You can view their traffic as long as it's not HTTPS. You can kind of see what's going on, and it'll send out a shell and put you behind their firewall just like the Raspberry Pi will. So these are kind of cool. We got lots of different modules and stuff like that. Okay, so let's go back and see what's going on here. All right. So I want this to be a little bit faster connection than what I've got going on. So I have an OpenVPN server set up, and then behind the encrypted little partition is my certificate. So I'm just going to connect this to my VPN. You can see this connection's a little slow, so we want to Hey, there we go. And we got that. So this is my scripting here so that we can keep stuff going. In the interest of time, now I can SSH in on my own because it's connected. And then what we're going to, wow, Daniel, you're killing me. Geez, that's kind of strange. Well, we'll have to do it the old-fashioned way then. Huh. Copy. So we would have thought copy and paste would be difficult. So I'm going to set up a dynamic port forward so that we can use it as a pivot, and that's going to take a second. I'm using public key authentication for all this to make it easier. So if you haven't seen what a dynamic port forward does, you're about to. They're kind of fun. It's a way to use SSH to pivot behind somebody's firewall. So we're going to need that here in a minute. It's taking its sweet time today. Okay, any questions so far about what I've done is I've planted a Raspberry Pi behind the network. The fireworks will start in a minute, I promise. There we go. So I already know, normally we'd want to scan through everything. Come on. Look familiar to anybody? Anybody help with the CDC? Yeah. So this is running on a server, 10.10.239.191. That's behind the firewall. And you can see I've got a nice script in here running when you log in through SSH that's going to tell you what the local IP address, so 10.10.239.224. So it's behind the firewall. So we can use this to access stuff. We can run scans. It takes forever, but I can run an nmap scan right from this Raspberry Pi and be able to see everything that's going on. Okay, let's get on to the fun ones. So, USB rubber ducky. A few of you probably know what these guys are. Looks like a thumb drive. You can use it as a thumb drive if you really want. It might be a little bit slow, but it tells the computer, I'm a keyboard, and I'm gonna start typing commands. Because keyboards are inherently trusted. Whoever has to, how do you type in a password in order to plug in a keyboard to your computer? You really can't. It's pretty difficult. So why not use that as an attack tool? So essentially it tells the computer, I'm a keyboard, and it starts typing commands. Let's demonstrate. Limited functionality on this one. The drawback with these is they won't wait until drivers are installed or anything like that. They'll wait a specific amount of time and then they'll just start punching commands. I've got a way around that here in a little bit. So let's see what this does. Sometime today. There we go. Okay, so let's take our little nice Windows 7 laptop here, and we're gonna plug it in. It's gonna go fast. Everybody see it? There it goes. And that's it. We'll see some stuff happening hopefully here pretty soon. This one was being a little bit difficult earlier. I can always do it again. Come on, sometime today. When in doubt, try it a second time. Maybe. Bueller? Huh. It's not doing me any favors today. Holy crap. It's gonna be one of those days. Well, It may pop up here in a second. If not, we'll go move on to another tool. Make sure that works. USB devices, which we went through. Okay. A little bit background on USB devices while we're waiting for this to maybe hold up. You typically need two things. You need to get programs on your computer, and you need to get it to run it. The nice part about these, when they work, is that it kind of does everything for you. If you can type it out, it can do it. So the typically social engineering type things, there was a study on that. We can probably hit on that here in a bit. CDs and DVDs, you needed the auto run feature. They've disabled that on pretty much everything. The Stuxnet worm passed stuff through flash drives. Modern weaponized USB devices, you don't even have to click on anything. It runs the whole payload all itself. Does it work? Yes. They did a study in Illinois State University. They dropped 297 flash drives. They couldn't do, they're required to use social engineering, so they couldn't use HID attacks like these are using. And they'd phone home when somebody actually clicked on stuff. 45% of the keys did phone home, so over half of them people plugged in. Almost all the keys were picked up, some were returned. A few people took the survey. Most said they just wanted to look at it to return the drive. 20% phone home within the first hour, so people really pick them up and they use them. So TEENSY, this one I know will work. TEENSY microcontroller, 20 bucks. Perfect for these drive-by type attacks, or you could disguise one if you really wanted to. These are much faster and more intelligent. They will actually wait for drivers to be installed. You can do stuff with the flashing of them. They have a little LED on them, which we'll hopefully show you here in a bit. You need a case to hide it, and they take a little bit more skill to set up. Let's see if we've got any shells. Wow. Tell you what, let's try something else. When in doubt, fall back to your test script. No. I am struggling today. There we go. Okay. Let's try this one. There we go. Okay, this one's a little bit different. When you plug it in, it has this nice little flasher on it. And so what it's going to do is it's going to wait for the drivers to be installed, and how it checks for that is it hits the numlock key, and once it registers that the numlock key was hit, it says, hey, I'm good to go. And it will flash go in Morse code when it's ready to go. Sometime today. It already went? Okay. Yeah, we've already got a session. So at least one of these is working for me. So it's going to provide some feedback. So it's going to flash 3 times, so that if I'm plugging this in, say I'm sitting in somebody's office, I know when I can unplug it. I know when it's created a shell. So what it's going to do now is it's going to migrate. It's all scripted. So it's going to migrate. On the other script that I was using, it would actually install a persistence package. I'm going to skip that right now, but it's pretty easy to do. So we'll let this finish up here for a second. There it goes. Now, UAC can be a little bit of a problem, right? So if somebody's running it as administrator, in order to get system level access, I got to bypass UAC. So that's what it's doing. So keep watching on that. See if are there any prompts coming up. Nothing, no antivirus pop-ups, anything like that? No? Let's try our ducky again. We'll need that here in a minute. Hopefully our ducky's working. Apparently this one's being difficult. Well, we'll keep going. Let's try our teensy on that. Where do I put it? Now the cool part about the teensy is you can do multiple attacks too. So the one I'm using right now, it types out a PowerShell command that downloads another payload. I've got 3 on here. The first one is a PowerShell one. The second one, it uses a VB script that downloads the payload. And the third one, there it goes. The third one that's really cool is it actually types out a C# application. It compiles it using the .NET compiler on the computer, and that downloads and executes the payload. That one will go through just about any antivirus. So I'm going to show you here in just a minute that ToughPad over there is running the enterprise version of Malwarebytes too. So we're going to mess with that in a minute. So
You said that thing does feedback?
yeah, it'll provide you with feedback.
It spams numlock, waits for it to respond, and then
Yes. So what
numlock won't activate when the process is running?
Well, it's looking for that change in numlock. So when I have a Metasploit module that runs once the session has been created, and it will send this a code, because this can tell, just like your keyboard, you know, the light on the keyboard that says numlock, caps lock, scroll lock, when those lights up, this can interpret that feedback, and so you can give it the feedback saying, hey, I have a shell created, so you can unplug me now. And if it doesn't get that feedback, it'll wait a certain period of time, and then it'll start the next attack. Yeah, so, all right, so that one's working. Let's do our Windows 10 machine, and I can show you the feedback here. This one's a little tougher to get plugged in. There we go. So I do have a demo one if you want to see it later that actually shows you what it's typing out. It doesn't hide it. This one, so this has the anti-exploit on it, so it may be blocking a couple of these, so we'll see if it goes for a second time. And then we'll really dig into some post-exploitation stuff. Come on, sometime today. So we'll talk about the keyboard there. It's going to go again. So there's our second attack. That's our VB one. See if that one will go. Oh, Malwarebytes blocked that one. So we'll quarantine that one. See if we get our third one to go. All right.
Why would it allow for the third time to block the last two?
The different downloader. So the second one is using a VB script, which is pretty common. The third one is going to use a C# program that I wrote, so that's probably not going to be on Malwarebytes radar, is kind of the hope. So let's see what that one does. That one just takes longer, which is why I have it listed third. Maybe? Is it going to be difficult for me? No. I think it's going to be difficult for me. Come on. The one big trick about having to do this is Microsoft and the malware people are constantly updating their stuff, and so you're on kind of a constant battle with them, especially when you're trying to do presentations. So we'll mess with this, and hopefully it'll come up here in just a minute. Let's see. Let's mess with that Windows 7 machine over there a little bit. It's kind of throwing off my rhythm here. So we want to install a keylogger. Let's have a little fun with it. Oh, there it goes. So here's your feedback. It blinks a couple of times. So I gotta let this finish now. So somebody picks up one of these devices and plugs it in. So you've got a shell on it. What all can we do with it? You know, a lot of stuff, especially if they're running as administrator, which I intentionally set up on a lot of these. Other things that you can do is you can plant stuff. You can use keyloggers. We'll show a VNC shell here in a little bit. And this one uses a different bypass UAC for Windows 10. It works just as well. So UAC really is just a speed bump. Every time Microsoft patches one, somebody else comes out and says, hey, look at this. Found another way around it. So, come on, there we go. There we go. So here's the keylogger. I kind of like this one. I did a little update for him. Set session 4. Okay. So this is running in the background. The update I did for their keylogger is now if the computer goes to sleep and it comes back up, it'll actually start it up again. So we're gonna log into that CDC website, that dispatch one, and we're gonna see what we can get. So we're logged in. So we see Bob. I'm probably because I typed it twice but username is Bob. Password is IH8 work with an exclamation. So how can we use that? Well, we already have the Raspberry Pi pivoting. So now we can log in. Oops, if I typed it right. Oh, wow, I am just struggling. That's why. There we go. So what can we do with it? We can see some stuff. It's not quite what we're looking for. We might be able to mess around, try and inject a shell into one of these, but it's probably not going to work. So we'll come back to that here in a little bit. Okay. Let's have a little bit more fun. What else can we do with this thing? This one's the really creepy one. Let's get creepy. Oh, look, there's a screen. Oh, it's even more creepy than that. Oh, look, we can control the mouse. Okay, let's have some more fun.
Would they be able to see that?
Yes, they would be able to see that. So if we wanted to surface them, or just post a nasty, like a creepy message on there, yeah, we would be able to, but you can see it's changing on the screen over there, which is why I wanted you to sit close. So this is the address behind the firewall, so we technically could surf the internet as them, but yes, they would see it. So let's do it even more creepy than this, if we wanted to surf the internet as them. So remember that 129.186 number? That's actually our firewall at work. So don't be going and pinging that, I'll know it. So close that connection. So routing. we can route through these meterpreter sessions. So this one's gonna come, I remember specifically a few of my classes where they talked about default routes. Does anybody know what a default route is? Come on, somebody. If you have a default route on your computer, what's that mean? It means any traffic not previously listed in your routing table is gonna go through that default route. So if I wanted to have all of my traffic go through one of these sessions, I need to set it as my default route, right? So that's what I'm gonna do. And basically it's gonna say any route other than any that I've defined will go through this session. So if I look at my routing table in Metasploit, which has a whole bunch now, it's grabbing all the ISU ones that these are coming off of, but you can see my 000 up here is going through. Boy, I got a whole bunch. Let's see, hopefully this works. And I'll have to go. Normally I do this presentation actually in the police department, plugged into the wired network so that I know everything works. Trying to do it over Wi-Fi is a little wacky. Hey, there it is. It did work. So I'm on my computer browsing through that Windows 7 laptop to use the internet. So think about what the implications are if somebody were to be able to do that, all from plugging one of these little nasty devices in. So I could surf some pretty nasty stuff, and who's it gonna get logged to? The person on that computer, right? So, kind of crazy.
I'm sorry, did you plug it into your computer or that computer?
It's this computer here that we plugged the device into that created the shell. Okay. And then once I had the shell, I can pour all of my traffic through that Metasploit shell. So I can route all of it. What's that?
But you have to have access to the image.
Either that or they plug it in for you. They pick up you spread a bunch of them around. They did a study that we talked about a few minutes ago where people plugged in over half of them. So you could spread them out around a business and almost be guaranteed that somebody, at least one person, is gonna plug it in and it'll get you behind their firewall. Okay, so there's our default route. Let's move laterally. Let's have a little more fun with it. So, anybody ever heard of PSExec? Ever heard of it? Okay. So what we have here is we have a user, i.e. me, down here on 4. So if I've got a user that I know might be an administrator or something like that, I can start hitting other servers that they might have access to. I don't even need to know their password. Metasploit was really nice, and they have this current user PSExec module, and so it takes the token from that machine and passes it to another machine. So let's try and use that. It's going to create a service on that machine. It's going to start it, and this one can take a second, and then it's going to get rid of it. So this machine is an old server that we're not using anymore. It's actually hosting the VM running that website. So there we go, and then it's going to do all its little things. Let's go back to our PowerPoint while that's running. All the stuff that I kind of blew through. UAC, talked about that. It's an obstacle. It's not a big deal. This is my take on what antivirus stuff does. So. Okay, we'll talk about the evil keyboard while that's going. So this is a photo inside. This is what I did for my creative component for my master's degree, was kind of messing with this. Let's see what that's going. There it is. Okay, so keyboard has a USB ports in it. I opened it up, disconnected one of the USB ports, rewired it into a Teensy. So what this is going to do is it can actually tell if the computer's locked or not. So how does it do that? It tries to type something into PowerShell, and if it doesn't work, it just waits. So it tries to type a command that will actually push the numlock button. So what it's doing is it's going to check to see if anybody's on the computer first. So on a kind of a random interval, it's going to hit caps lock. Now, if you're typing on your computer and caps lock comes on, what are you going to think? Oh, I just hit caps lock, and you're going to turn it off, right? Most people would. So it's looking for, it's going to hit caps lock, and if nobody pushes caps lock again within a certain period of time, it's going to try and execute something. If that execution succeeds, now it's going to pop a shell. So it can sit there for a long period of time and wait. If somebody hits caps lock, it goes back to sleep and waits for a random period of time, and then kind of goes back to it. So if I have a company that I'm scoping out, and I know they're replacing some keyboards, and one of them might have a USB port in it, I could easily get that in there, or I could just plant this and somebody come in and go, "Ooh, look, I got a nice shiny new keyboard," and that would be kind of fun to mess with people, right? So now we're on this server. So you can see this server down here. It's our old NetMotion VPN server, but we're gonna mess with that. Now this is the really crazy part when we use the PS exec, is look who the user is. It's the system. So I didn't even have to bypass UAC. Since I have administrator rights to that one, I automatically go in as system. So what can we do with that? We can do lots of stuff. I can dump the hashes. So let's grab one of these and see what happens. I just happen to have this set up already. So demo. Paste, save. So we're going to use a little hashcat work. This one's going to use some rules. The rules changes the A to the @ sign, an L to a 1, that type of thing. It adds numbers and letters afterwards. So let's see how quickly it cracks one of these. Yeah, that was fast. There we go. Here's the password. And this isn't even the fast machine. So password is right here. So what can we do with that? Well, if I can get click on the right one here. So since we're already behind the network, is it gonna go? Maybe? Bueller? Oh, there we go. I probably fat fingered it as everybody's watching. We'll see if that comes up. Essentially, that's how you would access remote desktop if it comes up. It's just going slow. We may have to rework our routes here. The route that's coming, it's pulling the main route off of this Raspberry Pi, and it can kind of be slow sometimes. So let's actually kill that and start over. There we go. Come off of 2. There, that's a little faster. Hey, look at that. And we have RDP access to another server on the network. So we used lateral movement to move from that one, since I was logged in as administrator, or just taking my token, logging into another machine. So what does this tell you? Don't use your same username for the password for the servers that you administer, right? The separation of privilege. So that's where this is really important, because attackers can move laterally using the same ones. So I have a script that you can, and Metasploit has one too, where you can put in a whole bunch of IP addresses and just hit each one, and any that user has access to, you're gonna get shells back for it. So we can mess around with this. I have administrator rights. I pretty much owned that one. So let's see if we can crack this other one. Okay. And this one that just popped up, that's my Raspberry Pi that I disconnected. After a couple minutes, it just goes ahead and reconnects back to me. Okay. So, this mobile PC, Mr. John Smith here. Remember, we bypassed UAC, so there's our NT authority, our system level. We can hash dump it, but that means I have to kind of crack those. What if Mr. Smith's password is nice and long? Do we have a way around that? Anybody ever use Memcats? Metasploit was pretty nice, and they built it in for you. When you're using especially Windows 7 and some of the older ones, or RDP, that password is saved in memory. If your system, you can access that memory. Oh look, plain text password. Pretty cool, huh? So let's see what we can do with this. Let's go back to our website here. We may have to change back to our, yeah, let's do that. I've got two different proxies going on here to keep everything going nice and smooth. Here we go. So it was J Smith, and then we'll put his password in. Maybe. Paste. There we go. If any of you were a part of the CDC, you'll know what I can do from here. So let's get a shell on this sucker. We're going to use MSF Venom to create a nice new PHP payload. Paste. Now, I want to kind of have a little bit of fun, so I'm going to have that Raspberry Pi, I want it to catch this shell and send it back to me, as opposed to sending it out through the network, because I want to try and keep everything encrypted as much as I can. PHP shells can't be encrypted, just the way that they're kind of set up, so they would be in plain text, and I really don't want that. So I'm going to set up port forward using SSH on that Raspberry Pi back to my computer. So I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. So if you do this local port forward, so I'm going to SSH back to my Kali machine from the Raspberry Pi, and the 0001341, that means open external port 1341 to any traffic coming into the Raspberry Pi. And I want to take that and I want to forward it to the 10.14.1.6, which is my Kali box, to the same port, because that's the one I've got listening. So, and this is through my VPN, so it's already encrypted from the Kali machine, from the Raspberry Pi to my network, and then it's routable from the inside. So, and then on my nice encrypted partition, I have the private key that this one accepts, so I don't even have to type in a password. It's already there. So if we want to check it, we can just take a look, make sure it's open and listening. There we go. Raspberry Pis are just a little slow. See, there we go. It's ports open on 1341 external, so it's ready to catch a shell. So what you can do with this too, this is your pivoting. So say you're behind a network and you can't get out anywhere, you would catch the shell and then forward it onto your machine using this. So behind really restrictive firewalls, this can kind of be a fun little jaunt. So we know this one, we created a PHP payload. I can show you what that looks like. all this mess. Metasploit's nice and gives you that. And then we want to export it as a PHP file in order to get the server to upload it or to run it. So now we can look at, and all we got to do is browse this PHP, and then we got connecting is spinning, and look at that. Sometime today. Come on. There we go. So there's our server. We popped a PHP shell on it. So we want to root it. Linux privilege escalation is kind of a fun. I don't have enough time to go through a whole bunch of stuff, but the easy quick one is that I have an idea that this specific Linux kernel has a vulnerability. Anybody hear a decal? Anybody hear the decal vulnerability? All right, so let's run it. I know a good one that works pretty well. So normally you would go through a big long process of looking through all the root exploits that there are for the box. You'd look at permissions, look for anything like that. So we'll pop it real quick. And there we have root. So we went from plugging a USB device into a computer to owning 2 servers on the same network. So it's pretty important to kind of protect those. And this is where educating people about the importance of not just randomly plugging USB devices into their computers is a big deal. We teach people a lot about, well, don't click on that phishing email, don't do this, don't do that, but a lot of people will really trust those USB devices to a fault. And it's really kind of scary what you can do with them. So where does that leave us? Did our post-exploitation? What others are out there? Hybrid devices. Has anybody played with these? These are really cool. It's called a bash bunny. It has Linux on it, and you can run different payloads. The really cool one is if anybody watches Mr. Robot, there's one where they plug a USB device in, and it uses Mimikatz to dump the passwords. This will actually do that exact same payload from the show. So if I'm an attacker, I can just have this in my hand, and I can plug it in, and as long as they're logged in as root, or as an administrator, I can dump those passwords using very similar means. And it has 2 different payloads that it can do. It has a little slider switch on it. It's kind of a neat little fun toy. So $100, different payloads, kind of fun. Defenses, how do we defend against this? We were talking about it. I'd recommend some security audits, telling people to change their passwords, the normal run of stuff. Pen tests, security patches, network security. Static IPs make it a little bit more difficult. So if you had a network that didn't allow any DHCP, it's pretty tough to plug in the Raspberry Pis into that, because you would have to know ahead of time an open IP port. And separation of privilege is a big one. Multi-factor authentication can cut down on stuff. Malwarebytes, we saw, it did go right through that once I plugged it in the second time. Zone alarm is pretty rough. I came up against a computer with zone alarm during my OSCP class, and that thing was a bitch to get into. Crash Plan, they actually changed their kind of a business thing now, but you can get on there. They have unlimited backups. I use that and I take advantage of that. LastPass, if you don't use a password manager, I would probably recommend it. I got Daniel hooked on LastPass. You can basically, it saves all of your passwords in an encrypted form, so you can use long random passwords for everything. It works on your phone. You can authenticate with your thumbprint and stuff like that. And then Metasploit, which you saw, Nmap, Snort IDS, other stuff. providing this training to people. I provided this training to the Ames Police Department, and they no longer accept any USB drives from pretty much anybody. They were telling me a story that they had a vendor come in and was showing them a demo of some stuff, and he threw out some thumb drives, and they all kind of stepped back from the table like, I don't even want to touch it because I don't know what's on that thing. Physical. This is about the best way to prevent people from plugging USB drives in. This is a joke, is to just concrete over all your USB ports. It's more than physical security. See, I gave this presentation to a physical security group. We got to protect those desktops and laptops. If you go into somebody's office and you're sitting at their desk and all you see is USB ports staring at you, it would be pretty easy. I've been into a couple of stores and they use iMacs for their endpoint sales, and the USB ports are just staring me in the face down there. These things aren't just Windows. Any computer that you can type a command in and get a shell, you can tailor these to. You can tailor them to Linux, you can tailor them to Mac. Mac comes standard with Python. Whoa, let's do that. That's the one thing I didn't do. Python shells are damn near, they're almost foolproof. So MSF Venom spits out this nice little code, and all you gotta do is cut and paste it. So we're root as dispatch, I still want a shell, so we're gonna, oh wow. This is, I blame Daniel, this is his computer, it's messing up. And it zapped it. Seriously? Oh, you're killing me. Wow. Yeah, shout out for Daniel here. Good thing I've got this thing saved. Presentation. There we go. I think it's your control. Oh, your function button and your control button are different. I blame you. You're killing me.
That annoyed me when I first got that because it's the only computer where the control and function key that I've ever used are switched.
That would be why this is doing this.
Yep.
So, cut and paste it. This might take a second. Huh. There it goes. So all I have to do is type that in, and now I've got a shell. So any computer that has Python, you can just cut and paste and it'll run right on it. Macs, these work. I've got a Mac at home, unfortunately, sometimes, and I use it to try and test that stuff. So there's my Python shell down here at the bottom. So pretty machine independent as long as you know what you're going up against, and that's where good enumeration, so getting an idea of what your target has really can kind of play a huge factor in that. All right, I think that's about it. So I can show some of the more intricate tools. If you want to see what it's actually typing out, I can show you. Hacking demonstrations are, if you ever decide to do one, they are a pain to get set up because something always goes wrong. So questions on what you saw? I guess I'm right on time, aren't I? Anybody want the presentation on a thumb drive?
Yeah, I would like that on a thumb drive.
I'm joking. I don't think, do you really want a thumb drive from me?
Yes, I trust you.
Okay. So, yeah, they're,
Microprocessor, I mean, why wouldn't you want?
yeah, yeah. So the Teensys are pretty cool. I think that's almost my favorite one out of all of them. So I did hear there's a rumor about one where they actually put some malicious firmware in so that when the computer would install the firmware, infect it, but I've yet to see an actual demonstration on that one. So that would be pretty damn rough because it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to protect against that. And you would never even know it when it would just look like a thumb drive. It would work like a thumb drive. It wouldn't have to type anything in. It'll already be there. So that's probably the North Koreans or the Russians. So, and installs Kaspersky at the same time. So, come on, anybody? Any questions? No? Okay.
Are
Yeah.
your scripts available anywhere?
Yes, actually some of them are.
Let's check.
On GitHub. Let's see if I can get all my repositories here. Under HID attacks, so GitHub/Snowfall and HID attacks is all of my Teensy code. And I have started the instructions on how to set it up yourself if you really want to. I use Veil Evasion to create the payload, the PowerShell payloads. And for the most part, those will go right through the antivirus software. I just host those on a web server so that all that these are doing is just going off to my web server, downloading and executing. So I tried to make the amount of stuff that it has to type as short as possible to make that screen disappear as quickly as possible. So yes, these are here. I've got some Metasploit modules on there, and then I'm in the process of adding some more. I have my own personal Metasploit modules and stuff on here as well. So I have some modifications, like if you normally, when I was typing in shell, this is one of my modifications. I'm going to submit it to them here eventually, but so it actually spawns a regular PTY shell instead of just being blank. So it makes it a little bit nicer. We'll see if they take it. I've got one pull request into them right now for an LLS command. I got to wait for that to land first. So that one's there. What other modules? I think I've got my bypass. Oh yeah, I've got my that mount secure one. So if you did want to create your own Raspberry Pi with a secure partition, the module that mounts that is there. I do have a priv check one. This one's based on a Linux privilege escalation script. So it runs through just about everything. It checks your permissions. If they have a quick fail, it'll let you know. I do need to add in some stuff for some kernel exploits that it'll detect if they're potentially vulnerable to that. I'll have a Windows one here pretty soon too. So yeah, give me some stars if you decide to use my stuff. And then I do have a really nice Overwatch plugin that they, for some reason, didn't want, but it automatically creates your routes, and it will update stuff as, oops. So if you're using the Metasploit sessions as pivots, it will automatically populate this routing table as they change. So if you kill one, it'll automatically go to the next one that has that route and so forth. So yeah, that's kind of a fun little plugin if you want to use it. So yeah, if you're taking Dr. Jacobs 530, is it 532, where you do the hacking lab? Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So any other questions?
If you're the user on that computer and somebody had done this to you, is there a way to trace back to like the
Oh.
that's using?
Yeah, you could do some forensics on it, but there's also, let's kill some sessions here, and there's a cleanup script that comes built in that will wipe all the logs and everything like that. So if you notice that it starts doing anything weird, but a good hacker, you're not going to pop a VNC shell like that unless it's going to be view only. Then they can view what's going on. You can capture, you can take screenshots and stuff like that. Oh, that's the one I didn't do. We'll get creepy, but here in just a second again. Actually, hang on. I didn't do my cleanup one. But there is a cleanup shell, or a cleanup script that wipes all the logs. So the one thing I didn't do was on our mobile. Is it gonna work? Oh, it did work. So, Metasploit was nice and left the light on because this is for pen testing, but it probably wouldn't be overly difficult for somebody to bypass that. So you see the people that have their, like Mark Zuckerberg that has a a piece of tape over his lens. They're probably paranoid for a reason. So, yeah, the easiest way to find it would be through forensics, but you can clean those and stuff like that. If you're actually on the machine, you could do a net stat, and it would show you that it has an outbound connection going to some weird port. If I was going to do it for real life, I would have this set up on a port 443, so it would just look like it's normal web traffic. And the other problem is the more Windows gets involved with stuff, like Windows 10, even if you don't have hardly anything running and you type netstat, it's reaching out to their servers, it's reaching out to a whole bunch of different stuff, so it becomes harder and harder to find those. But it would be in the netstat table because it's creating an outbound connection. So it's pretty tough to see it, especially when your antivirus stuff isn't even catching it. We'll close out of that. Anything else? SSH port forwards are something that you should know if you're going to research anything on that. Okay. I'm pretty much done. If you want to see some more stuff, I'll leave some of these set up, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Man, this function control key is killing me, Daniel.
Yeah, I know. It took me forever to get used to. Do we have puzzler stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look into that.
Okay.
Everybody's, what?
Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, if you want to talk about puzzler, then we can go into the beginner's note.
Okay.
I'll get everything out of the way here.
With that one, yeah.
Well, I'm just going to throw this at you. Oh, I should probably take my mouse back. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I hope.
I got too much junk.
Okay. All right, so this week's puzzler didn't have any solutions, but I think it made it a bit too difficult for the first encodings puzzle semester. Here's a setup I would usually do for an encodings puzzle. I'd open this website, it's a CyberChef. I posted a link in Slack the other day, and I just dropped the text into the input. So since we got a binary string, first thing we do is we decode from binary, and then that gives us an octal string, all the numbers from 0 through 7, so just add onto that with from octal. Here we get a hex string, so from hex, and then base 64, which is just all the letters, uppercase, lowercase, all the numbers, and then plus and /, so from base 64, and then there's the flag. Questions on this one? All right, next one is up. It's a bit easier. Nathan managed to solve it already before the meeting even started, so I think that's record time. Good job. First crypto puzzle, so I'll hand it over to Logan now.